Yo, Pokey26 here, and we have a new set of patch notes, the second version of 1.36.2. I have not actually looked over the patch notes yet or heard anything on them, apart from I did hear that tauren are still at tier 2, and I maybe heard something about force of nature, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, so it's going to be pretty new to me as well. So, you know, no spoilers. I'll go through it and find out as we go. Might have to backtrack over some things when I find out what other changes are, but yeah. So right from the start, ping displaying incorrectly doesn't really matter. Okay, so we get to human right away. Human, arcane tower, hero feedback reduced. I think this is good. It's still, I believe it's still overall increased from where it was like a year ago. But it was, they like doubled it, right? Wasn't it like 8 and then it got buffed to like 16 or something like that? Or maybe it was 12 and then 16? I don't know. Now it's at 14. I think that's a good change. Yeah, because it is quite annoying when you just like accidentally get hit by an arcane tower out of nowhere and boom, you just lose so much mana. And arcane towers are definitely strong as is, especially since they don't require any previous buildings to make. You can just start. Okay, knights and saundering blades. I don't know why it's titled or labeled saundering rather than sundering. But for some reason they have an A in it now. Whatever that means. Anyways, knights and saundering blades no longer require lumber mill to build. This change is quite weird. As someone that has sometimes not had a lumber mill for knights, it sounds pretty nice. But personally, I think knights should probably still require something like the lumber mill. But maybe the upgrade doesn't necessarily need to require it. That way you can research the upgrade while you're building the lumber mill. Things like that is good. But when you have both of them no longer even require the lumber mill, then you're like, wait, what does the lumber mill now provide? And the lumber mill currently only provides what, like guard towers? Does it even provide anything else? Like, isn't it blacksmith for things like workshop? Not lumber mill? So like, what does the lumber mill do? It seems kind of weird if it's only guard towers, unless I'm misremembering something. But that's the only thing I can think of. So I don't really like the change in terms of like how it fits in with requirements of things. But I don't necessarily hate things like saundering blades not requiring it. I do think something like knights or some sort of tier 3 unit should probably still require it though, as like a prerequisite thing. I don't know. Maybe it's fine. Like balance wise, maybe it's fine. And they are increasing the wood cost of saundering blades, which, to be honest, if the wood cost is getting increased for this, and it's something that you have to actually research now rather than being built in, maybe they're building the lumber mill anyways, and it doesn't even matter that it doesn't require it. So I don't know. Maybe it's all fine. I don't particularly hate these changes, but I do think the lumber mill change is essentially weird, if that makes sense. Okay, and then the polymorph hero duration reduced. So the last iteration of the PTR, they decided to say polymorph can now affect heroes, which is just also weird. And I think it's a change that likely won't matter in most scenarios, because you're typically not going to get polymorph, and even if you do, there's a big chance it doesn't matter that much. Like, it can potentially just be dispelled right away, and now your sorceress is out of mana and they invested all this into it and it did nothing. Right? It seems like a very a very end game type upgrade you would want, more for like free for all or like very end game human versus undead or something, where you actually have all that tech. Um, but if they are going to have this in the game, I would say I don't hate them reducing the duration of it, because it probably should be fairly low duration on something like a hero. Like if it's this big of a disable that, you know, prevents you from using items or anything. You can't do anything until you're actually dispelled it off. So this change is good that they're reducing duration. I don't know if polymorph on heroes thing is good in general, but I don't particularly think it's a problem either. So like if their goal is to mix things up and keep things interesting, then I guess this is probably fine to have in the game. It's just kind of a weird change, I would say. Okay, so orc. Ooh. So headhunter base damage reduced. I honestly don't know where headhunters sit these days, because they've been changed, like buffed and nerfed and then buffed and then nerfed again, and I don't even know where they're at now. But I don't I don't necessarily hate headhunter nerfs, but I think it would be so much cooler for headhunters if like the tier 3 berserker upgrade gave them back what is nerfed as their base. So like if they're gonna nerf the base damage here, have the tier 3 upgrade give +1 base damage as well, and then it kind of evens out, right? Like they're not so strong early mid game, but they're like the same strength late game type of thing. But as is, I mean, I don't know. Like 1 damage, it's fine. Like you can still use headhunters just fine with this. So yeah, and although they are nerfing headhunters here, you're getting buffs elsewhere. So well, kind of. So basically, tauren is still on tier 2. They are increasing the build time, it looks like, by 5 seconds in order to do that. And base pulverize is being reduced. So they are like actually trying to make tauren stick at tier 2. I really don't know what to think of this. I don't think tauren belong at tier 2, but if they are going to put it at tier 2, this is probably a good way to do it, to nerf the pulverize damage and nerf the build time. Even with these changes, though, I do think tauren are probably a bit too superior to any other ground at tier 2. So I wonder if that would force opponents against orc to like always go tier 3 into tier 3 casters or something, or tier 3 heavy air or whatever. I don't know. But then even if you did that, the orc would probably be going like tauren raider headhunter or something, you know, with maybe like a 1 or 2 walkers for spirit link. It'd be difficult to kill things. I don't know. These changes, I mean, similar to the human changes, I just find them weird to take away orc's tier 3 unit, and now orc tier 3 is simply for upgrades and not unit. Like there's no tauren there anymore. Whereas other races still have, you know, frostworm, chimera, griffins, and then they also have like knights. They have a bombs. They have master bears, if you want to count that. Like you don't actually get the real bears until you have master training, and master training is tier 3. Like other races have multiple things that like really require tier 3 to do any tier 3 stuff, or you know, any of their like end game stuff. But orc can actually just stick tier 2 now, and the only thing they're really missing is berserker headhunters, That's the main thing they're missing. But Berserker Headhunters, you would still be getting against undead anyways, and you would probably be skipping tauren unless you're facing like Cryptlord Expo. So this is not even a problem for Orc. Like everything works out incredibly well for Orc, but probably too well, I would say. I'm not sure how good this changes for the game, but it will definitely keep it interesting, I would say. Heal Ward mana cost reduced is also pretty cool. I do think heal wards are insanely powerful as is. The problem is not really the mana cost, although I'm sure that could be seen as part of the problem. I think the problem is just witch doctors don't offer you anything when you're first getting them. You know, like Orc is generally really strong right away at tier 2, but if you're going witch doctors, you don't have any benefit from them at tier 2. And then at tier 3, you also don't have any benefit until you actually get heal wards as well and enough army massed for the heal wards to matter. So honestly, witch doctors are really strong. They just don't fit a 50 food army. And I don't think this is the type of change that mixes that up. It's more of that headhunters are much more suited for like a 2 base scenario that reaches 80 food. You know? Like if it's Orc versus human and they both are 2 base versus 2 base and we're getting late game, Orc would want to add a couple heal wards just to heal up their, well, now tauren, but previously grunt raider, whatever they have, grunt kodos, I guess. So I don't know. I think the change is fine. Like this is probably a fine change. It doesn't really affect anything particularly as is, but it doesn't really change whether or not you're making doctors right away on tier 2, especially when you're already now going into tauren and probably 2 walkers for Spirit Link and maybe Discord. Okay, Night Elf. So Searing Arrow is still getting buffed and actually getting buffed even more. Starfall. Okay, let's just look at Searing Arrow first. So Searing Arrow 10, 20, 30 is already strong. Like it's the strongest damage orb in the game at 10, 20, 30. Now, apart from Orb of Corruption, if there's enough follow-up damage, Orb of Corruption is probably the highest. But this is really good. Like, it's fine as is. It should have, assuming the notes haven't changed, it has reduced mana cost too, I believe, now. But yeah, it's actually, is there? Oh, is this the overall changes? Master changelog. So this is the overall changes. Yeah, so it would still have reduced mana cost here, 8 to 5 as well. I don't think this is necessary. So, oh, they're actually upgrading tier 1 damage as well. So you're gonna have stronger at tier or at level 1, level 2, and level 3 Searing Arrow are all stronger. And the level 3 Searing Arrow is over 50% stronger. That is crazy. Like, there are some people that actually have already chosen Searing Arrow's max level on level 5 Priestess. And now they are definitely going to do it with at this level. And yeah, I don't like this change because it mostly affects Elfmere. And it just seems bad to have this in Elfmere because now you're just going to get bottom, Priestess all in pushes and stuff like that. And on level 5, you're just going to have a Priestess that pokes you down for an extra plus 50 damage. And it's like, what is happening? You know, you got your demon hunter there trying to hold a push. You got some demon hunter archers. Then they're just hitting your demon hunter for base damage plus 50 on each hit. Like, how do you survive that? You're just dead. So I don't know. I don't like this change. It's a buff for Elf, but I think it's a bad change. Like, why is this the buff that Elf gets? Anyways, we'll move on from that. Basically, I think it's bad, even though it's a buff for Elf. Yeah. Anyways, Starfall duration reduced, but damage increased per wave. I think that's a good change. Starfall definitely lasted way too long. Like, you really shouldn't be sitting there for 45 seconds channeling a skill. So I think having the damage increased a little and the duration shorter is good. I believe it's technically less damage overall, but you will likely get more damage out of it because you generally weren't, going for 45 seconds worth of the damage. So, and they kept this fairly tame, only plus 10. And I think that's good. You don't want to go too high here for sure, because that could be pretty strong if they actually raised it too much. You could end up with like the first few waves just wiping everything. 60 is still pretty strong though, so yeah. I think this is a fine change. Like I said, it won't matter in most scenarios, but maybe Priestess is more of a hero now. With Syrian heroes like this, maybe you actually just see more Priestess play. Like the good old Priestess Dark Ranger against human, right? And you go like hunts into like one Rax hunts into like what is it, expansion in Mass Dryads or something. You just kind of pick stuff off with double arrows and stuff now. That could actually be a thing. Anyways, Keeper of the Grove, Force of Nature, mana cost reduced. Okay. See, the thing is, I was gonna say this is good because Moonwells got nerfed, but then I see that they're actually buffing Moonwells in the next couple lines as well. Where does this even set Moonwells now? What was the old changes in the previous patch? Was it 1.45 in the previous patch? On Moonwell regen? I don't even remember. Anyways, this change as is, like if Moonwells are back to normal, like what they were a couple patches ago, I don't think this is necessary. But if they're still a little bit weaker than before, then I guess this is alright. It is just Force of Nature as well and not like Entangle. Entangle is not getting the mana reduction, so I think people are more comfortable facing Treants than they are facing a bunch of Entangles just picking off units. So I don't hate this change, but I don't necessarily think it needs to even be to 85. Like if you're gonna reduce it, honestly, even just 90 is fine as well. I think I'm pretty sure the meaning behind this is mostly that Keeper is just completely fallen out of favor, and it's like more Demon Hunter play these days. So maybe this is a good change, and then if Keeper rises back up again, maybe they would slightly nerf it again, and the 85 would turn back to, like I said, 90 or 95 or whatever. That being said, I don't even know how good Keeper would be if Priestess is now hitting this hard. So we'll see. Moonwell regen. Like it might be, I don't know. Anyways, Moonwell regen increased from 1.35 to 1.45. I don't actually know what it was nerfed from in the previous patch, but I do think it's good that Moonwells are getting back to where they were. But I'm not sure of where they was at. So That's something I would probably have to check back up on again. But I do think it's good that Moonwells are getting essentially reverted, not technically buffed, just reverted to what they used to be. Although, like I said, I don't know the exact numbers from before, so I don't know if it's like full reverted or what. Wellspring regeneration mana bonus reduced. I think this is good. I had actually mentioned in the previous like 4 different versions of patch notes that instead of the Moonwell regeneration being reduced that they had in those, that they should have done Wellspring getting nerfed in some way instead. Because I think Wellspring was the bigger problem for other races, not the actual base Moonwells. And it's easier to balance it if you're not completely nerfing a base thing like Moonwells for Night Elf. So I think this is a much better change than nerfing Moonwell regen. But it's cool to see that they're reverting this and nerfing this now instead. 25 mana, Elf can definitely suffice with that, especially with them getting their regen back here. So Elf will be quite comfortable with these changes. Mountain Giant, this is just getting reverted. They were going to reduce it to 6, and then they decided, no, let's keep it back at 7. Honestly, I think this change is negligible in some matchups. I don't even know if Mountain Giants are going to be that good, especially with things like Tauren on tier 2, but I think it's probably better for it to be at 7 food, but I don't necessarily think it would have broke things at 6 food per se. So this is probably a good change to just, well, good way to just keep it as it is. It's not really a change, right? Because nothing happens if it just stays at 7. Nerubian. Okay, so now we're on Undead. Nerubian Tower damage type changed from melee to piercing. I do think this is good. I'm not sure if piercing's the right choice. It's probably fine. I mean, yeah, it's probably fine at piercing. I was wondering if they should have it at magic damage instead, but piercing's probably just fine. I think this is good because it being melee damage was kind of weird, and it really just crushed things like archers and headhunters and stuff if you tried to like push or harass it all early. But piercing mostly punishes like huntresses and air, which I think is better for undead to have that. Or I shouldn't say better. It's undead will still be fine against ground units because they got the slow on Nerubian anyways. But against air units, it's nice to have that little bit extra damage with piercing, I would say. Frost Nova, slow duration, reduced. Okay. Units only, heroes remain unchanged. This is a good change. It still lasts plenty of time. Like, the base number at 4 is still 4. It's just the higher levels are a little reduced, and I think that's quite okay. This is a good change. Frost Nova still is going to be one of the best AoE spells in the game because the damage is not changed, or the AoE and the cap and all that. So this is just fine. More patches for Warcraft. But yeah, I think this change is good. Herp Lord mana cost reduced. Imopli, also known as Impale. I don't know if this was necessary. but it does definitely make Crypt Lord a lot more viable. That extra 10 mana is huge because oftentimes this 100 mana Impale was very. You had to really think about when to use it, and you probably only get like one or two max. I don't know if it's at 90 now. Maybe you're getting a couple of them. Maybe you're adding in an extra set of beetles or something. I don't know. I think this is it's probably a good change just because Crypt Lord is underused these days, but Crypt Lord is still strong, so I don't know. We'll see how it works out. Death and Decay, mana reduced, okay. Doesn't really matter because it's an ultimate and you don't really see ultimates, especially on Lich. But it's probably a good change because sometimes Death and Decay wasn't even chosen, and maybe now it will be. Ghoul Frenzy research time increased. Okay. I think they still have the nerf or like 5 attack speed on Ghoul Frenzy. And they're increasing the research time as well. So Undead's timing push is a little bit off now with that extra 15 seconds. Definitely a way to nerf Ghoul Frenzy timing pushes. And in return, they're getting web cost reduced, which is also pretty important for Undead because there are matchups where they're basically required to get this web upgrade, so they're just getting an extra 50-50 resources. Undead will definitely like this. It's probably a good change. 150, 150 is way too much for web, I would say. But it is definitely a really strong upgrade. So, yeah, I mean, you're still going to get it. I think this is probably good as well, the Ghoul Frenzy time. Because ghouls will still be powerful, it's just, it'll be a little, like, 15 seconds slower, I guess. Boneyard cost reduced, okay. I mean, that's a fine change, not really much to talk about with it. It's interesting they decided to reduce the gold cost rather than the wood cost. I honestly thought they would just cut the wood cost by like 50 or something or whatever. This does make Frostworms a lot more viable, actually. But you probably still won't see them in a lot of matchups. One of negation charges. Oh, so they actually have. So they were at 3 charges and 200 gold, which I didn't know because you had to actually play the PTR to know that, I guess, because they didn't label it in the previous version. So first I can talk about that. 3 charges at 200 gold is probably slightly too good. So I can understand why they're changing this to 2 at 150. 2 at 150 looks like a good price point. And I think that's a pretty good price point. 75 gold each is definitely cheap enough that you would use this in certain scenarios, especially against like tier 2 pushes with like Firelord second type stuff. Like if they go lava spawn pushes on tier 2 and you manage to get tier 2 as well just in time for it, you can pick up one negation and start dispelling stuff. That could be huge for holding your expansion against those sort of pushes. It does still require you to get tier 2 to do that, but you can oftentimes buy enough time to do that. Maybe the initial push still hits quick enough and you have trouble with the lava spawns, but if you can like hold out and then wait for your tier 2, this could be huge. So I think this is good. It'll help a lot as well against treants, especially if treants are stronger now, which they buffed from Night Elf section. So Undead will be very happy with this. And I think it's a cool item to add into the game. It could actually end up still being too strong, but I think it's good to put it in and see how it works out. Curse duration reduced. Probably good because it was definitely like way too much time. There's definitely some spells like this where they just had so much duration on it. So that's a good change, I guess. Mana Shield. Okay, so neutral units or heroes and whatever. Looks like it's just heroes. Naga Sea Witch mana shield activation cost reduced. I think that's a good change. 25 is way too pricey for a skill that is honestly kind of bad and still bad because it doesn't really offer you anything. The opponent just ignores your hero then if you have it. So I think this is a good change. Soul burn damage reduction increased and hero duration increased. Okay. I honestly already choose Soulburn on Firelord, and I think it's already decent. It is still dispellable, but now if you don't have a way to dispel it, this is crazy powerful on heroes like Demon Hunter, Blade Master, and so on. Like when they're losing 75% of their damage, they're basically hitting like a little kitten, just pawing away at your at your legs, doing nothing. So you definitely want to have a dispel against this, I guess, if it's your main damage dealing hero. But as far as the change goes, it's probably fine. I don't think Firelord's like particularly imbalanced or anything, so it's fine to do something that maybe makes Firelord see a little bit more play, I guess. Ankh of Reincarnation delay reduced. This change is interesting and probably good for the game. Ankh probably does deserve to have a little bit of a buff because sometimes it just ends up being sold instead of actually used. So being able to get your hero back 2 seconds quicker is probably a pretty good change. Generally a buff. I'm sure there's instances where it could be a nerf technically if you want it, if you want your hero to not be there longer, but generally it should be a buff. And I think that's fine for the item because this item is slightly worse than the other items, so this will make it slightly more in line. Gloves of Haste attack speed increased. That is quite interesting. Especially because previously items like Claws of Attack have been nerfed and then nerfed again. And then they got like reverted with one of the nerfs, but still nerfed overall. And yet, for some reason, Gloves of Attack, which I do agree is subpar to Claws in general, but the fact that this is getting buffed is weird because usually they're not buffing damage items, like early damage items like this. I don't know if this is a good change, but it probably isn't a bad change. It's just kind of, it's just kind of whatever. It will be weird if you get multiple Gloves of Haste, though. Like, if it's just one Gloves of Haste, there's probably plenty of instances where this 5% attack speed doesn't even result in an extra attack, right? Or, it results in like one extra attack or something. It's like kind of negligible. But if you have like multiple Gloves of Haste and your hero is just attacking like chopping away, if it's a Blade Master or something, this could actually get kind of crazy, I would think. I don't know. I don't know if this is a good change, but I think they can have this change go through and it would still be, it's not going to break the game per se. It's just, we'll see how it works out in the game. It might be fine as this anyways. Because like I said, I do think gloves were generally a bit worse than things like Circlet and Claws and even Ring of Protection now, since Ring of Protection was like Ring 4 instead of Ring 3 and 2 and whatever. So, I don't know, this is probably fine. Creeps. Sleep no longer targets heroes. That's actually a huge change. But I'm not sure what maps that affects in solo. Like, are there even creeps that sleep heroes in solo maps? I know there are in team maps, probably free for all maps. But I do think this is a good change. I don't know how much it matters. Duration reduced, okay. I mean, people oftentimes just woke their own unit up anyways. Cooldown increased, okay, whatever. There's 4 changes for sleep creeps. Like, okay, dude. Like, oh, I mean, I think this is a good change. It just honestly doesn't matter much, anyways, because most of the time people are gonna wake their own hero up, whatever. But now that it can't target heroes, I guess it's good. Uh, I guess maybe if there's a creep like at a merc camp that you can purchase, maybe this matters. But I'm not sure if there even is, except for maybe in all the randoms. So I don't know. Dark Troll, High Priest, as abolish. I don't even know which priest this is. There's like 3 different priests, or 4 or 5 different priests. I don't even know how many priests there are. Like, which priest even is this? Like the purple looking one on like poison maps, like corrupted tree maps, or whatever. I don't know the effect of this or if it matters. This is cool, not having shadow meld, and that they're sleeping. So this changes some camps actually. I don't know if it's a good or bad change, but it makes it easier to judge what you can do at the creep camp when you can see the creeps and they're not, invis, and they are sleeping and stuff. So I think these changes are good. I think the sleep changes with not a long training heroes is good. Blood Wizard can now sleep. I don't even know what a Blood Wizard is, but okay. So like a free for all creep or something. Forcer HP. So instead of Shadow Meld, it now has 100 extra HP. Okay. Rune of Speed, duration reduced. Probably good. 60. I didn't even know it lasted 60 seconds, but that's a long time. But these don't really affect solo maps, anyways. So kind of whatever in general, I would say. Infernal stuff got increased for move speed. Don't think this matters much. And this is just the master change log with the previous changes and the new changes. Um, yeah. So I guess I guess I could quickly say which races I think are the best from this. I think Orc is still very strong off of this because they have tauren at tier 2 still, even though tauren are getting slight nerfs in order to be at tier 2. I still think tauren are going to be powerful. They do still have a base pulverize, even though it's only 15 instead of 20. It's still having a base pulverize is huge against all the other, you know, units at that tier and lower. So I still think tauren are going to be strong there, but increasing the time they take as well, it does mean it's going to be a little bit slow, which is why I almost wonder if orcs are going to do like fast tech into double totem plus bestiary or something. Yeah, I mean, I think tauren would be used against elf, human, and orc. Like, how can you pass up tauren against breakers or rifles? And against elf, it probably prevents the elf from playing max tier 1 stuff. Maybe if the elf is still going. I mean, I think you would play tauren against bears as well. Mm, I mean, I think you could go totem plus lodge if you wanted, right? Like there's this extra initial cost of having to add the totem, I guess. But that initial cost probably means nothing compared to being able to have a tauren instead of a grunt. And you're probably bypassing brute strength now. Like you don't get brute strength at all. Like you can just skip that, right? And brute strength is 150 wood, so now you have the 150 wood for the totem, and it's only 100. You know, you have like 100 extra gold cost or something to make the totem compared to brute strength. But instead, you're making tauren instead of grunts against breaker rifle stuff, whatever. There you go. Which sounds incredibly powerful to me because they still have a base pulverize. I don't know. It seems good. Because currently, don't I think orcs go like headhunters and then they convert to grunt, shaman, maybe raiders, godos. But now you can just go tauren, shaman, and then raider, godo, whatever, and not get brute strength at all because you're not making grunts. Um, I think it's quite manageable. I think if orcs played grunts from the start instead of headhunters, maybe then you're thinking of more cost because um, they would want brute strength when they already have a few grunts. But now they don't have to make grunts at all, right? Like they can just go headhunters directly into tauren and whatever. So I think the cost is pretty minimal for that. I think orc is pretty well off in this. I think undead is also pretty well off because I do think, where is it? Wand of Negation is huge. 2 charges, 150 gold. It was 3 charges, 200 gold, but I think 2 charges, 150 gold is still pretty strong. And this will be pretty powerful situationally. You won't always even need this, of course, but situations where you do need this, it can be huge to just be able to AoE dispel something for 75 gold. Especially if you're trying to expand and you just get rid of their summons or whatever. But like if you're facing Farseer, Shadowhunter, Wyvern stuff, you can get rid of wolves plus hex with this without needing destroyers, for instance, right? And that's a thing, or at least it was a thing at times where people would play Farseer, Shadowhunter, Wyvern harass stuff. They'd try to pick off some fiends early and whatever. Now you have one engaging, you just get rid of that. There goes the wolves, there goes the hex, and you're like, Lamau, Coil Nova. So I do think this could have a lot of value for undead, but we'll see how it works. Maybe people just don't even make the units against it, or the summons against it that it would be good against. I don't know. But they're buffing Keeper as well. So you would think, oh, well, now Keeper can do mass treants against undead expos now that it's cheaper mana. But then it's like, oh, wait, if undead actually manages tier 2 or expos at tier 2 to begin with instead, they can just dispel it and suddenly these treants mean nothing. You know, minus 6 treants with a 1/1 negation. I don't know. Kind of strong. So I would say orc and undead still as the previous version. I still think they're the strongest here. Elf is actually pretty strong here too. I think human gets the worst off here. Elf, the problem with elf here is the elf strength with priestess and keeper is kind of weird. I don't know where it fits currently. Especially the priestess. This mostly just feels like an elf mirror thing, but with the damage being this high, maybe you actually see this in more matchups than just elf mirror, because this is a huge damage increase. It's even the level 1 arrow being increased, not to mention the last arrow getting a huge buff. I don't know. And then the Moonwell stuff is huge, of course. You know, they're getting a little bit of Wellspring nerf, but base mana regen increased. So I think that's good for Elf to have that switch. So yeah, I would say Orc, Elf, Undead are all getting interesting changes that make them interesting to play. And I think human, I think if you're looking at the stuff as human, you're like, well, this sucks. What do I do with this? I'm not going polymorph for a 1.5 second hero poly that just gets dispelled, or it's not even that long a duration. I don't know. Kind of like whatever. I think it's a bad change in general, but even as a change, it's kind of like whatever, probably. I mean, they have Sundering Blades, I guess. It's like requires an upgrade again. So, but I think that's good, right? Because people wanted human to get a little bit of nerf around. Anyways, I think that's about it for the patch notes. As for how it shakes up the game, I'm not. I don't even know if this is good or bad for the game, which I think is a good thing in general because it means you kind of want to play and see, right? Uh, but if I did have to change something, I think the tauren at tier 2 is weird. Because it's weird that Orc has nothing at tier 3 besides upgrades now. But I don't know. If they are going to nerf tauren's base stat stuff with increased build time and pulverized damage reduced, maybe it can work out like this. Especially because tauren, where it sat at tier 3, was pretty bad since other races have tier 3 heavy air magic damage units. Which is, tauren just doesn't have a place anymore when it's there, I guess. So yeah, that is the patch.